So I had this set up as poll everywhere. I think it's probably easier to say true and false if everyone's okay with their answers. And
Sure.
like I said, the answers, I don't know if they're the right answers or not, but we'll see what everyone has. So if I have this all set up correctly, there we go. So it says, the little painting's in the way, but it says, students with IEPs should be clustered together in the same classrooms. True or
I'd say
false?
false.
False.
You would say false. I would say false as well. And when I took over in the building I'm currently at, that was not the case. The students with IEPs were clustered together in rooms of teachers that are dual certified. And before I arrived, there used to be like co-teaching environments in every grade level, and then due to staffing issues and everything, that wasn't able to continue. So when I showed up, there was every dual certified teacher had maybe 5, 6, 7 students with IEPs, and they were their case manager as well. And I'll discuss that more in a minute. Tier 3 RTI support must be provided by teachers with special education degrees.
False.
False.
So I agree that it's false. However, when I arrived, I guess just the way, either the way things had been done in our building beforehand or the way things have been done in the district, it was difficult. Like when we had to open up a new tier 3 group, someone said, oh no, we don't have anyone else to service our students. And I said, that can't be the case. We need to service our students, obviously. And yes, the answer is false. However, that wasn't the way it was always done. It was someone with a special ed degree had to do it. Similar question, pull-out support written into IEPs must be provided by teachers with special education degrees.
I'm saying false.
So I would say false as well. However, the way the building was set up, that pull-out support was only being done by teachers with special education degrees. And lastly, it says case managers must have a special ed degree.
I'm gonna say false.
I'm gonna say
I think
false,
it's
but in my building, I can say it's true. All of my case managers do have special ed degrees.
And I think in a perfect world, it would be nice. I mean, it would be very helpful if every case manager had a special ed degree. And again, I'll talk more about this in a minute. But even though it could be debatable, the true answer is false, that you can be a case manager, kind of in a project management sort of way, which I'll be able to talk about here shortly. So just basically the vision and mindset to start, what was my personal experience versus the established culture of the building I came into. My personal experience, I was 19 years old and I took Spec Ed 101, I believe. And that was it. I never took any other special education courses during my undergraduate degree. And then I was a 22-year-old first-year teacher, and I was teaching 8th grade math, and I had students with IEPs in my classroom without any co-teaching environment, without any push-in support or anything. And I was servicing students based on making accommodations, modifications based on what was written in their IEP. So just reading their IEPs, understanding and being able to provide the supports as needed. That was not the case in the building that I came into, where we had teachers who did not have special ed degrees, and if they did not have a special ed degree, they never had a student with an IEP before. And it really came to a head, I guess, or like the epiphany in my mind was shortly after I started, I was having a conversation with a couple of teachers, and we're talking about modifications, accommodations, and I said, you guys discuss this quite often during team meetings or anything, and so on and so forth. And they said, yeah, we do. Like if there was a team of 6 and there was 2 dual certified teachers on the team, and each one had a caseload of say 5 or 6 students, they said, we do. But unfortunately, everyone else kind of talks about the weekend or, you know, what's going on. And they weren't all invested in the our students mindset, where I truly believe in our students, and if we, you know, work together, if we all work together to help our students, all of us bring different things to the table, so on and so forth. So when I realized that, that we're not using the strengths of every teacher in our building to help all of our students, I knew something needed to change. And I remember saying, I probably shouldn't have said this, but I said, you know, we're just gonna take the way we do special ed and blow it up. Like, that's, it doesn't sound nice saying blowing it up, but it's true. So what did we do? The actual action that we took were two things. One, when I arrived, we had grade levels spread throughout the building. So, for example, we would have one grade level that had classrooms upstairs, classrooms downstairs, classrooms out in the trailer. And there wasn't a lot of collaboration going on and being able to take advantage of all of the strengths that every teacher brought in. And so that was the first thing we did, was move classrooms into grade level clusters. So kindergarten teachers were together, first grade, so on and so forth, up to fifth grade. And then also, we went with the idea of natural proportion, which every single teacher in the building was assigned at least one student with an IEP. And of course, we were careful that if the student had many complex needs on their IEP, of course, we made sure that that student was with an experienced special education teacher, but ones who could be serviced in the classroom, just like I did as a 22-year-old first-year teacher. We wanted to make sure that all of our students were spread throughout the building. We could all work together during grade level meetings, during PLCs. We could actually talk about how we're going to help each of our children, and both of these obviously led towards collaboration, formally and informally, when teachers were able to talk before school, after school, in between classes, and then also having ownership of our students. Kind of goes along with the whole we, with colonial and everything. Was it easy at first when someone who had never had to actually read an IEP, never had to provide the accommodations before? No, it was definitely not easy. So we would have been setting ourselves up for failure if we didn't provide the proper support and tools for teachers to use. So how do we do this? We started off the year in faculty meetings. We had some of our very experienced special education teachers or teacher leaders present at faculty meetings. We brought in local support from Access from University of Delaware. And like one of the things teacher leaders did was actually took a template for an IEP and actually based it off the standards-based IEP, and was able to break it down and say, this is section 1, this is section 2, these are, you know, types of things that go in there, and actually show step by step how you write an IEP. And of course, that one meeting isn't enough. So what did we do? We continued training throughout our PLCs during common planning time. We had experienced special education teachers share how they collect the data, how they, you know, track the data, share samples of IEPs, work, you know, hand in hand, actually writing the IEPs or figuring out, helping to decipher the IEP, which someone had not seen before. And then also we had case manager days where we use our building budget to pay for half-day substitutes to come in and actually, so we could pull out the teacher had never written an IEP before, teachers who had written them, and then work hand in hand when it was time for a new IEP meeting to make sure that they were in compliance and writing everything down correctly in order to provide the best supports.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
For clarification, so you're saying that all of your teachers are trained to write IEPs, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
And you're saying during an IEP meeting, at times, there's not always a certified special education teacher at an IEP meeting because
No.
your classroom teachers are trained.
So in addition, so if we have one teacher who is not special ed certified, they are serving as the case manager, like I mentioned earlier about like project management and kind of coordinating everything, but we still bring in a special education teacher, someone who is certified in special education, into the IEP meeting. And
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to make sure. Okay, so there's always a special ed teacher in the IEP meeting.
correct.
Okay, all right, and then, but your regular ed teachers are sometimes required to write IEPs.
Yes.
Sometimes
With
or
proper support.
all
all the time, yeah.
all the time. But they don't have but one student or two students at most in their class. And so, and they're getting that support from their own special ed teachers, like I call it hand over hand support from their own special ed teachers in their own buildings.
And I think this talks about it. Sorry to cut you off, but here I think you answer some of the questions where literally we have true adult collaboration in the best interest of each child, not every child where we're taking, you know, the top and the bottom kind of squish in the middle. We're trying to help each individual child. When I said like I didn't know if this was the best way to do it, like this wasn't my vision. My vision was that we were going to spread students out with IEPs throughout the building and do natural proportion. But I was hoping originally, like I think back when I said I was in North Carolina, even though I had students in my class with IEPs, I wasn't the case manager, but we had enough dedicated special ed teachers who were able to divide up the caseloads, and I think they actually had additional like planning periods in order to do the case management. Due to staffing, we weren't able to have as many dedicated special ed teachers out of the homeroom in order to do that. So that's how, by default, we ended up going with having every homeroom teacher be the case manager, unless of course someone was pulled out so much out of the classroom, then we would have that pull-out teacher be the case manager. But this thing going about like, who knows the child best, the teacher that's pulling them out for 30 minutes of reading or 30 minutes of math or 30 minutes of writing, or the one that's with them the entire day. So this actually changes the mindset of what case management means. It's more, like I said, like project management, where it's more coordination. You, as the homeroom teacher who knows the student best, becomes the #1 advocate for this child, which of course you should be anyway. You become the mentor to the child, you are the expert on the child, but all along you're still getting support from experienced special education teachers. And that project management piece, like project management isn't, you know, easy. People need to practice, and they say, you know, you learn the work by doing the work. So if the homeroom teacher is actually the one coordinating, and if there's any questions, bring in the special ed teacher to ask the question or to answer the questions or to help write the IEP or to write specific goals or whatever, they're there. But one of the other positive things was that our dual certified teachers who before were teaching the same, you know, number of hours during the day, teaching the same number of students as non-dual certified teachers, when they had 5, 6, 7 IEPs to prepare for each and every year, they were getting burned out. So that no longer happens, thankfully. And of course, when you're the teacher that has taught for 20 years, 25 years, and have never, ever, ever had a student with an IEP in your classroom, was there stress? Of course there was. But so many of our teachers who were petrified at first totally rose to the occasion and wanted to do a good job. And with the proper support, they've done a wonderful job. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I think they've done a really good job at it.
So would you say the mindset then, the shifting of this mindset from being disenfranchised from special populations to the ownership piece, just through the homeroom placement only, has been successful?
Hugely, and and that was, when I said like this is kind of like informal, like I don't think this is brain science. I think like what's in the best interest of our kids? Is it the best interest to say, hey, just because you got an additional degree or you took the practice or whatever, here you go, here's, you know, here are some of our most needy students who need the most support, so we're going to put them all in your room so you can provide that support. Is that in the best interest of each child? I don't think so. I think they can get the better support from a teacher who may not have so many high needs in their classroom, if that makes sense.
I love the idea of the collaboration, and that's basically what we do here in my building. But I'm just looking at the scenario that each one of my grade levels has between 16 and 18 special ed students. I only have 3 classrooms.
Sure.
So I have some teams that wanted to actually divide the students up and have, 7, 8, or 9 in their classroom. Then I have other grade levels that decide, you know what, I would prefer for our grade level second teacher to be able to have more time in the classroom, and we do more of a co-teaching model. And all the students, well, not 18. I have first grade, there's only 8 of them. So they're in one classroom. So I have a little, a mixture. I guess my question is, when a teacher has to actually write the IEPs and actually, more than that, just the data collection that's needed, throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year, of being responsible for not only writing the IEPs but also collecting the data and, putting it into some kind of matrix to share those extra responsibilities that the special education teacher has, to making sure that those goals are being met, making sure the goals don't need to be tweaked or changed in any way.
So I think that's totally a question of staffing. Like, I agree that it would be better if we had enough dedicated special education teachers to devote their time to providing supports and case managing, but unfortunately we didn't. And so now, when I think, like Kelly mentioned, a teacher may now have 1 student who requires a lot of support, or 2 students, versus the dual certified teachers who, like, some dual certified teachers, they had a regular education degree and then took the praxis. And now all of a sudden, because they took the praxis, we're going to ask you to do the data collection on 6 students. We're going to ask you to, crunch the numbers on 6 students. We're going to ask you to write the IEPs on the 6 students, and that's not right.
So the data collection, and the way I look at this is every teacher collects data ongoing of their students every day in their classroom, and they should be collecting data, academic, social behavior data, to keep themselves informed about what a student's progress is. It just becomes easier when you only have 1 or 2 to track those data points, and you share that with parents frequently on an ongoing basis, oftentimes in a journal that goes home every day in an elementary world. Those things have become very typical, and it's easier to make tweaks to their goals when you're working with that student daily, in order to set higher goals with the student rather than lower goals with somebody who doesn't come into class, who doesn't see that student in their successful periods of time, that's only seeing them in their areas of challenges. And so it is a mindset for the adults to work collaboratively and to change some of the functions of their typical roles to be able to do this successfully.
And it sounds like you had to build in some time for the teachers to be trained on how to do this, because I'm assuming, you're asking teachers to write goals and IEPs, and they haven't done that before.
Right.
So, and I agree with you I'm just thinking about my building, that I do have dually certified teachers that have those additional responsibilities, and you worry a little bit about their burnout, because depending on the grade level, there may be more or less children, and they're responsible for all of that. Maybe this could be a way of maybe leveling the playing field just a little bit. They're still probably going to get the bulk, but maybe instead of getting 8, they get 6, and the other 2 teachers get 1 apiece. So something to think about.
And when I talk about what's in the best interest of each child, like, sometimes it may be in the best interest of each child to have 4 students with similar needs in the same classroom, so they're getting consistent instruction in their classroom. And then if they all require 60 minutes of pull-out for ELA or 60 minutes of pull-out for math or whatever, then they're going to that pull-out teacher. And that's actually what we get. Like, we have 1 grade level that has, I want to say, 4 teachers and 12 students currently with IEP needs. They're not divided up 3, 3, and 3, because of those 4 teachers, 3 are dual certified, and we knew that was going to be a heavy grade level, so we had to make some staffing changes in order to best support our students. But in that 1 particular grade level, there's one of the classrooms has 4 students with very high needs, and they're with the same teacher. There's a pair there that's able to help provide support. And then when they do get pulled out, they get pulled out at the same time. So there's that consistency in instruction. And then that teacher that pulls them out shares the case management responsibility
Did
with
you
the homeroom teacher.
did you reduce the amount of students in that total class because those kids were higher needy,
Yes.
had higher needs?
So
So that
that's-
was the give on that. So
and only by a couple, you
Yeah.
know, but still, and then like when new students would arrive, we would make sure that we filled in the other 3 classes first, and we still do.
So I'm assuming at the end of the year, you're looking at, the students with IEPs and thinking very carefully about their placement for the next year and, what teacher and, their learning styles, all of those things to figure out who would be a good fit
Yeah.
for the student.
you want to talk about your old pink and blue system, and you're getting to that?
Well, I don't have that. I was gonna have like our next steps,
Oh, okay.
which are like, I can talk about that. When I first arrived, there was the pink and blue system, where at the end of the school year, the grade level teachers would get together and pink piece of paper were female students and blue piece of paper were male students, and then they would go through and mark down test scores and other types of needs and so on and so forth, and then they would kind of get together and try to balance them out. That's what happened, I guess, before I arrived. The end of the first year I was there was a matrix that was created for the district that was based, like gave points for different things about grades, attendance, behavior, high academic needs, so on and so forth, and rated students on a scale like 0 to 60. And the idea was if you had 5 or 10 students that rated a 60, you didn't want to make sure, you don't want to put them in the same class because they would not be able to get the individualized support that each of them needed, and B, would be very difficult for one teacher to provide the best supports. And I know a number of schools used it and it worked out very well. I think our school used it and we may not have assigned the points as accurately as we could have, so it may have been user error, so we did it, and then still don't think it dispersed our students the best way possible. So we kind of went back last year, not exactly pink and blues, but kind of did like a modified system, but it was a lot of time and a lot of meetings with our ED to look at each student from the grade level, what their needs are, how much push and support is required, how much pull-out support is required, and then we had to look, and that's when we realized, this one grade level is going to have high needs, and there's only one teacher in that grade level that is currently dual certified. We're gonna have to figure out something, so that's why we made changes. Now we added 2 teachers to that grade level that are dual certified. But when I put next steps, so
Tom, did I hear you clearly saying that you actually made changes to the number of teachers assigned to the grade level after looking at your special ed case loads?
not the number of teachers, but the actual teachers.
Oh,
So
the actual
before
teachers.
we had four
Okay.
four teachers, only one of them was dual certified.
So
We had to
which
move.
ones were assigned?
So we had to change staff assignments in order to help our students with special needs population.
And that is, again, a forward thought too, in some places that have a status quo model. And I think I've heard all 3 of you guys talk tonight about, you each have a little bit of some models at different grade levels, and using the hybrid of models of what works best.
And that goes back to our students, like
Yep.
someone may have taught this grade level for 10 years, 15 years, whatever, but what is in the best interest of each child, maybe to move grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
And again, none of that is easy, but if we all work together in the best interest of kids. So next steps, like I said, it's not a perfect model. I wish we had more dedicated special ed teachers that could be outside of the classroom, that could push in and provide more case management, but unfortunately we don't. So we just have to do what we can do to help all of our students. So what are we going to do? Continue to provide support with the IEP writing case manager days, additional PD conferences. Anyone who wants to go to the inclusion conference, we're sending them. Anytime anyone asks to go to a conference, I'm more than happy to send teachers, as long as they have a plan to attend and then come back and share and implement right away. This year we have some district inclusion behavior coaches that when a teacher is struggling either with a student's academic needs or behavioral needs, we're able to contact them and they're able to come in and actually work with the teacher. And then also, I have a vision for next year where we may be able to switch a few things around in-house, where I can have like a dedicated special education team leader / inclusion coach who can actually go into classrooms, model lessons, provide the informal coaching in a non-evaluative way, and then also actually look through all the students. And we have a part-time ED, so right now the coordination of where should we put students where they'll receive the most support possible is kind of a long conversation between me, the ED, the AP, and teachers. Whereas if we have someone who's more dedicated to that role, they may be able to look at all that data and say, oh, you know, based on these students' needs, this would make sense to schedule a student here or there.
Sounds good.
I think that's it. Let's see if anyone has any questions, and then the questions I have for, I guess, the two of you are, how do you have spec ed services set up in your own building or district, and what can I learn from you to improve our services? I said, we are doing what I believe is in the best interest of students, but also it would be wonderful to have, 10 more teachers, which, that's the nature of the beast, is not gonna happen. But if there's another way or another model that I could do to provide additional support, I could do that.
Well, I mean, the way I set up spec ed services in my building is very similar to the approach that you mentioned before you got there. My special ed students are, it's very rare that they are not with a dually certified teacher. However, there are grade levels where we have such large numbers of students that we may say, okay, student A, B, and C, based on their needs, will be okay in so-and-so's room. But I think the difference is that the regular ed teacher, the special ed teacher still writes the IEP. So they're like, they coordinate with the I don't know if I'm saying this clearly, with the regular ed teacher, but in the end, the special ed teacher does the writing of the IEP. But I'm thinking about what you're saying about providing that teacher with some training, that they're able to maybe work on writing that IEP, and maybe the special ed teacher is there just as a support or to provide some guidance, not necessarily writing the actual document. Because the downside of that is you kind of hear them saying, I don't know this child as well because I'm depending on information from someone else. So
Think about the
Collaboration.
secondary models too, because working with middle school and high schools that I've had experience with, different schools approach this in very different ways. There are teams that write them collaboratively together because they're going to multiple classes at the same time, and there's not a special ed
Right.
teacher in all those classes. And some high school principals are insistent that the general ed teacher writes the content goals in collaboration with that. So it's a matter of philosophy and an approach of what you expect out of your teachers as well.
And just in general, like any change is scary, just in general. So yes, if it's someone is not certified in special education, they hear the word IEP or hear modifications and accommodations and everything, they get scared, and it's understandable. But like I said, what did our students do, or what did our teachers do? Some teachers were petrified at first, but with the correct support, a lot of them wanted to do a good job, and they did a wonderful job. And I mean, anyone can log in and type into a system. It's, what are you typing in there? And if you're collaborating with a special education teacher, but you as the expert of the child who is teaching the child on a daily basis, the student's strengths, where they need some extra support and improvements and everything, and truly goes into, like what you said about the, like secondary model where you would need the math teacher's input, the English teacher's input, the science teacher's input.
Tom, I do have a question for you too.
Sure.
Have you had any feedback from your parents using this model?
We have not had, I have not had any feedback per se, like we haven't had any negative feedback, and I take that as
Yeah, I know your
Like
demographic,
Luke's.
so I would assume that there might be some parents who are insistent upon a specialist handling their child, but you haven't had that happen.
we have not. I think I mentioned earlier, and when I say we haven't really had any quote unquote positive feedback, but I think that's good. That's a smooth transition where they haven't noticed a change in services, which is good. If they had a lot of negative feedback, that would be bad. But I mentioned earlier, some of our students with the highest needs, I made sure that they were still with a teacher who was dual certified, and when need be, we actually, like for example, last year I had one student who needs a lot of support, and we were able to move that student and the teacher that worked with them and the pair that worked with them from that grade level to the next grade. So that was very, very helpful.
Good. Shavana, do you have any comments or questions?
No questions at all. I think it's very interesting. It's something to definitely think about, because we definitely have to be creative with the numbers of teachers that we have to, that we only get, the number of units that we get. It's interesting that, I always think about, being in compliance and staying out of court, making sure that we're doing what we have to do to make sure all of our students are getting what they legally are entitled to. And so, and just on another note, also, some teachers, some of the pushback that you evidently you did not receive, but I just know some teachers will push back saying, well, that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to become a special ed teacher. That's why I did not, take the classes and be certified.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, we did receive pushback, definitely some very strong pushback, and sometimes maybe I say things I shouldn't say or I'm blunt about things, but like in my mind, like you didn't, not you, but to the teacher, you didn't sign up to be a math, or hopefully you didn't sign up to be a math teacher or special education. Hopefully you just signed up to be a teacher to love all children, support all children, help all children, and we did have that conversation openly that, hey, this is what we're doing next year, and I understand if not everyone is on board, and we go back to the good to great bus model, and make sure you have the right people on the right people on the bus, the right people off the bus, the right people on the bus.
There you go.
Well, I think it's the stigma associated with the label, because oftentimes we teach children and we don't even realize that they may have a disability to a point. And so for a person that pushes back and says that, they as a qualified teacher should be doing their very utmost to meet the needs of every student in their class. And when they get to the point where they can't do it by themselves, they have to collaborate with the people around them in order to be successful. It's a collaboration model. It's really not about gen ed or special ed. It is about true collaboration and individualized placement based on the need of the kid, not on the label.
And like I said, my experience as a teacher in North Carolina and as an administrator in North Carolina, and then as an administrator here, were very different. But the building I walked into, it's not like what I'm doing is might not be better. There was nothing against what was happening before, but to the building leadership's credit before I arrived and to the district's credit before I arrived, there was a large push on changing that stigma and changing the labels. And it's not special education students, it's students that either have IEPs or students that have additional needs. And then also the whole, I was speaking with one teacher who used to be a co-teacher in our building, and she said that she was the co-teacher, special ed support, so she was on bus duty and the other teacher wasn't, and that's just the way it was all the time. And she said, that doesn't make sense. Like, we're, the true co-teaching model. We are both teachers. Both of our names are on the, on the door, and so on and so forth. And so So that started before I got there and has continued where outside of a classroom where we have we don't have any co-teaching environments, but we do have some paras in classrooms. So we have the name of the teacher there, the name of the para there, and students address, obviously both the teacher and the para as teachers and, caring adults in the building that are in the classroom working to help each child.
So I was just thinking about metrics, Tom, and you've done this for a few years now too, maybe potentially some student, parent, staff surveys just to kind of see the change from what previous services look like to now, benefits, pros and cons, pluses, deltas, as just feedback piece. I don't think people realize how easy it can be when it becomes more personalized and you know that kid and you try it and you've got successful with it. And then if you have barriers, you just collaborate with people you work with year after year.
And this is the second year that our district has gone to a more inclusive model throughout, and there were district inclusion surveys. I did not send any personal, that's a good question when you asked earlier if I had any feedback. And I don't want to fool myself, but I would like to think that the services have either continued or improved, they haven't worsened.
So it sounds like the entire district is using this model, or no, or?
Not,
No,
okay.
okay.
We're more inclusive as a district,
Okay.
where students that used to go
Right,
to a
okay.
different school are now going to their home schools, thankfully. And but the actual setup within our building, I would say, is probably still unique right now. But we did it out of necessity. Well, we did it out of what I thought was right, but then also the necessity of.
Right, because it's like, as Shavina was saying, the numbers, I mean, it's a reality everywhere, so.
But so I firmly believe in having our students spread throughout the building and having all staff working together and having ownership. I said the case management part, I know could go either way, and that's the part that kind of evolved. It wasn't, that wasn't the initial idea.
I'll just say John Hattie's research on collective teacher advocacy is at the top. And when you talk about collective ownership and collective collaboration around what matters is teaching all students to the best of their ability, that's the heart of the matter. The old mantra of gen ed and special ed has been out there in the last 40 years, but the newest movement for being inclusive minded is really individualized services and true collaboration around professionals. There's nothing that great teachers can't accomplish when they put their minds together, supported by a visionary leader and the supports that they are needed to have those things in place. I believe that what you did to support your teaching staff has been probably the basis of helping that staff embrace this model. And again, you tweaked the model. It didn't work in one instance for one grade level. You still tweaked it again. There wasn't one set model that your school was known for doing special ed staffing this way only. And I think that's a bigger message. So, thank you, Tom. I appreciate you presenting tonight.
Sure, thank you.
Shavina, thank you for